Hey guys, it's Bro You Whack, and with Season 8 scheduled to come out on December 5th, I figured now would be the best time to bring you a detailed beginner's guide of the newest hero to come out with Season 8, Mauga. And while I know a lot of people got to play him during the trial period during BlizzCon, one, I never got to make a beginner's guide video for him, but the second thing is that a lot of the numbers in his kit will change, which I will list in this video, but the way that he plays will not. So for anyone that struggled playing Mauga when he first released during BlizzCon, or for anyone that just wants to play him for the first time and possibly wants to main him, this video is gonna help you out. So without further ado, let's finally start this beginner's guide for Mauga. Mauga is going to be a Samoan tank that a lot of people assume is an act first, think second tank, where that's a lot of people's first mistake when it comes to the newest hero. And while he definitely can tank a lot of bullets because he does have 500 health while he's in open queue and 650 health while he's in roll queue, and in fact it's already slated for him to get 150 of his health replaced with armor when he does release with Season 8, you have to remember that he's a lot more than this giant meatball that's just here to feed. Mauga has so many complex layers to his hero kit that if you just take the time to learn them, or just watch this video, you could be ahead of the competition. And the first complex layer that I feel like is the most important to talk about is his passive ability. Mauga's passive ability is called Berserker, and this allows Mauga to earn a temporary health whenever he does critical damage on an enemy. This includes just normal, everyday headshots that you can get with your chain gun, but also, more importantly, whenever you do damage to burning targets. And you can earn upwards of 150 temporary health whenever you do critical damage. His passive is going to be something very important to remember, especially when we talk about his forms of damage next, but just how you control Mauga, because this is what's going to be your biggest key to succeeding with him. So now let's talk about another important part about his hero kit, his forms of damage. Everyone, I want to introduce you to Gunny and Cha-Cha, the best named guns in all of Overwatch 2. And if you forget which one is named Gunny and Cha-Cha, well, their initials are at the tip of his guns. These are going to be dual-wield chain guns that function slightly differently than one another, and you'll see the difference between the two, but both of the chain guns are fed from that massive 300 bullet pool. But it's important to note that that 300 bullet pool will change when Season 8 releases. But first, let's talk about my favorite gun out of the two, which is Gunny. This is his incendiary chain gun that quite literally lights the enemy on fire. Now here's some important things to know when it comes to Gunny. It does about 5 damage or so per bullet. The damage fall-off range ranges from 25 meters to 35 meters, and to be able to light the enemy on fire with Gunny, you have to put a consistent amount of 12 bullets into the enemy, and the burning target will stay burning for 3 seconds or until they're cleansed. But here is the most important thing that I want you to note about Gunny. Whenever you fire Gunny by itself, it has a super tight spread, meaning that if you're farther away with Mauga, you ideally want to fire just one gun at a time to be able to hit more of your bullets. Now that we talked about Gunny, now let's look at Cha-Cha. This is his volatile chain gun, and the unique feature about this gun is that this will deal critical damage to burning targets. The difference between Gunny and Cha-Cha is that Gunny just lights the enemy on fire. It doesn't do anything other than that. And the special thing about Cha-Cha is that if an enemy is burning, even if you're shooting them in the toes, it will count as critical damage. So whether you're burning the enemy as yourself as Mauga, or from Torbjorn's ultimate, or from Ash's TNT, and you shoot Cha-Cha into that enemy, you're doing crit damage. Now the numbers for Cha-Cha is actually the exact same as Gunny. It does roughly about 5 damage per bullet. The damage fall-off range ranges from 25 to 35 meters. And also, another important thing to note is that when you fire Cha-Cha by itself, it once again has a very tight spread, just like if you were to fire Gunny by itself. But like I said, these are dual-wield chain guns, so what happens when you fire both of them? Pure destruction is what happens, just as long as you're like about 2 feet in front of the enemy. The spread when you fire both of the chain guns increases drastically. Even if you're anywhere from 5 meters and above, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of damage. But another important thing to note is when you fire both the chain guns, you do have a movement speed penalty applied. But when you only fire one of the chain guns, you don't have a movement speed applied. So ultimately, the only logical time that makes sense to fire both Gunny and Cha-Cha is when you're in like about Reaper range or so. So how can you get in Reaper range? Well, with this first ability. His first ability is going to be called Overrun, that strikes fear not in the enemy, but in your ally supports, because they see your tank running away from them at full speed. This ability allows Mauga to charge forward with brute force and to end the charge with a ginormous slam that does damage. While this might seem similar to a Reinhardt charge, it's nowhere close. This is going to be a 6-second charge unless you want to end it prematurely, where you can charge upwards of 30 meters. When you collide with an enemy, it's going to knock them back very slightly, and it does an additional 20 damage. And if you stomp on an enemy, it can do anywhere from 40 to 80 damage with a potential stun of some sort. And when you're done charging, whether you go through that whole 6 seconds or you end it prematurely just by simply using your primary fire button to then initiate the slam, there's going to be a 6-second cooldown. Now, here are the effects of Overrun. When you're running into an enemy, it will knock them back, but it won't pin them like Reinhardt. However, if you slam directly onto an enemy, it will not only do damage to them, but it'll also knock them down, kind of similar to like a Reinhardt Earthshatter. Enemies that are slammed within the area of effect of his slam, which is about 7 meters or so, they will be knocked upwards into the air, and they'll take slightly less damage than if they were slammed directly onto. And enemies in the outer area of his slam will take minimal damage and will not be knocked into the air and will not be knocked down. Now, the best part about Overrun is that you will not be stopped by any CC abilities, and this now will include Sombra's Hacked, as stated from the blog post posted earlier in the month. Literally, there's only 2 things that will affect you when you use Overrun, and that is another Mauga that is using Overrun, and you're just kind of knock down each other like a Reinhardt charge. But the second thing is Orisa's Fortify, and here you'll just kind of move past her. You won't be stopped. But another important thing to note is that when you do use Overrun, damage that you absorb as Mauga while running is reduced previously by 30%, but now it's going to be 50%, as stated in the blog post posted earlier this month. So while you do reduce a lot of incoming damage, you still want to try to treat this like a Reinhardt charge, because the longer you charge, the easier it is for you to get out of position and to still possibly die by the enemy, because you still are this giant meatball just running. Well, now let's look at his second ability, which is called Cardiac Overdrive, which admittedly is a somewhat confusing ability, so I'll try my best to explain it. But what this does is that it allows nearby allies and Mauga, even though it doesn't state that, to take reduced damage and to heal by dealing damage. Heal yourself when you're dealing damage, that is. Cardiac Overdrive lasts for 5 seconds, and at the end of Cardiac Overdrive, you have a 10-second cooldown, and allies within a 30-meter radius is affected by this, but you do have to have line of sight of Mauga. Allies that are affected by Cardiac Overdrive reduce incoming damage by 30%, and 60% of damage dealt converts into heals. So a hero that will benefit heavily from this is a hero like a Turret Bastion, where you dish out a lot of damage in a short period of time. But now let's talk about the greatest ultimate in the whole entire game. His ultimate is called Cage Fight, where you throw down a WWE barrier where you as Mauga and anyone in that barrier is trapped and you have to duke it out. So here are the numbers for Cage Fight. The barrier is about 15 meters in diameter, and it's this gigantic cylinder that has 1,500 health. In other words, you will not be breaking this barrier, but if you somehow manage to, it will cancel the whole entire ultimate. And the Cage Fight does last for a total of 10 seconds, even if Mauga dies. But now let's talk about the effects of Cage Fight, because honestly, there's just so many. So first and foremost, it does trap you as Mauga, but it also traps anyone within that 15-meter radius whenever the ultimate is activated. But in addition to that, any enemy that goes into the cage itself will be trapped also. And you'll know you'll be trapped because there's going to be a chain connected to you. Now, in this clip, I am showing bots that are chained. You are able to move while you are in the cage, so I don't know why these bots aren't moving, but just know that you're able to move within the cage. You just can't leave the cage. The only time that you're able to leave the cage is if Lifeweaver life grips you out of there, if you as Orisa Fortify, or if you as Symmetra use your teleporter, which you're wild if you do that. But also note that allies of Mauga are able to enter the cage and leave the cage at any time. They are not going to be trapped. But the most unique feature about Cage Fight that only applies to Mauga is that you have infinite ammo. You're able to spray and pray without having to worry about reloading while the Cage Fight is going on. And that was the beginner's guide for this Samoan meatball named Mauga. And hopefully this video just helped you learn how to play him a little bit better. And if you wanted to main him, hopefully this is your first step on mastering this hero. But until Season 8 comes out. I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. More Overwatch 2 videos to come, and bye.